I've been a security guard for most of my adult life, working in countless different places and environments. This happened almost 8 years ago now, and it is still by far the most disturbing and strange thing that I've ever experienced. I was on the West Coast working in a pretty small, older town, and I had been relocated to start working in a new building, specifically at a place that the city has had trouble with for a few years. It was a large, abandoned shop right on the edge of town that had been vacant for decades. However, over the few years before hiring security, the amount of break-ins were ramping up, and a lot of horrible activity started to go on near the building. The kind of stuff you only get away with if no one else is around. The city tried keeping the lights on inside the abandoned store to deter people, but it didn't help much. And after a couple went missing around there, they hired the security company I worked for to keep some guys out there to make sure people stayed away. Thankfully, most nights I didn't work alone. Darren was an older guy that worked through the nights with me, 4 out of my 5 shifts a week. And for the first 3 weeks being stationed there, nothing happened. We had these temporary security camera rigs set up on the outside of the building, and would mostly hang out in the room with the monitors, checking the feed. Every once in a while, we'd get a motion alert from a couple of teenagers walking up to the building, but as soon as they got close, saw the lights and cameras, they'd run off. Now, we did do walkarounds of the inside of the building, because we hadn't set up cameras on the interior. Though it was just a quick 5-minute walk through all the back hallways and rooms without checking too hard, because we had cameras on the outside, so if someone had gotten in, we'd see it. And hopefully the motion detection would pick it up as well, although it was less reliable. One night, around 1 a.m., Darren left the building to take a leak in the woods right behind it. When he left, I obviously got an alert from one of the motion detectors of him walking away. But just about 30 seconds later, I got another alert on one of the other monitors, picking up motion near the front door. There was a man in dark clothing walking right up to the door. A moment later, I heard loud knocks against the door from down the hall. For a second, I thought he might have been someone with our security company coming out here for some reason, because he walked up so casually. But when I started to head down the hall toward the door, the man continued to hit the door repeatedly, in a way that made me second guess myself. Then I heard the back door open from Darren walking back in, and the knocking immediately went silent. When Darren saw me in the hall, I told him someone was at the door, and we both ran back to the monitors. No one was there anymore. He quickly wrote the whole thing off as a joke of me to try and scare him. I didn't know what else to do or say, so I just forgot about it. Whoever was out there left anyway. The rest of that night was quiet, and the following 2 nights I worked with Darren were quiet as well. But the third night was one that I worked alone, and around that same time, 1 a.m., that same man came back to the building. I admit I was resting my eyes when the monitor alert came through. It's harder to stay awake when working alone, but as soon as I saw the guy, I was wide awake. Although this time he didn't knock on the door. He looked more like he was trying to find a way in. He was creeping around the building, trying to see through the windows and testing all the door handles. I could even hear from inside the building every time he would try to open a door or push open a window. After a few minutes, he gave up and walked away. I wrote down a report of it in the logs, but figured it was just some idiot waiting to see if security was still here. 2 more weeks went by after that. On all of my alone shifts and shifts with Darren, nothing more happened outside of the ordinary occasional visits by drunk teens. But then on one of my days off, I got a call from the security coordinator at the company I worked for. There was an incident with Darren during his solo shift last night. I asked a ton of questions, but I got a very vague, useless explanation. Essentially that something happened to Darren the previous night while he was alone there, and he immediately left his station at the abandoned store and quit. No 2-week notice or anything. Just quit right on the spot. I tried prying for anything more, but I didn't get anything. I even texted Darren's cell phone, but he blocked me after a couple of texts without even responding. We weren't great friends or anything, but we did get along well. This was really strange to me. It obviously had me a little unsure about going back, but when the time came, I ultimately just went on with my shifts. Of course, alone now. That first night back, I stayed very aware and alert. I thought about all the possibilities of what could have happened to Darren. Some easygoing, chill guy to just pick up and leave so suddenly. Though one of the biggest unspoken rules of being a security guard in places like this is to not let yourself have any type of imagination. Overthinking everything only makes the job harder. After a while, I told myself he probably just hated working alone and decided to leave. If something really bad actually happened, surely the company would be required to let me know. I stayed in the monitoring office for a while, then got up to do my walkarounds. I looked around a bit more thoroughly, given the circumstances, opening all the doors and checking in the rooms. And in one of the rooms right near the back door, I found something off. The window was shattered, and I knew it wasn't like that before, because all the other broken windows were boarded up. This was recently broken, probably during Darren's last shift. Now, things felt more serious. I walked up to it and looked around. It was dark and cold outside, and eerily quiet. Suddenly, I heard a beeping alarm from down the hall. It was the motion sensor alarm, and just a moment later, I heard a stick crack behind me, and I saw something move outside the window. There was someone out there, standing just far enough to be out of sight. I could really only see the bottom of their legs, hardly lit up by the temporary lights on the outside of the building. I stared at them for 20 seconds before they started to speak. Quietly, between soft cries, they were whispering help or help me. I never felt more scared in my life. I ran back to the monitoring room and got on the line with the police. They started heading out there right away. I then did what we were always trained to do, to lock up the room and wait for the police to get there and take care of it. A few minutes into waiting, I began hearing the voice again, calling out to me from where the broken window was. I was absolutely horrified. When the police arrived, I ran out and told them everything, and left as soon as I could. I quit in the morning and didn't care to find out what was really going on out there. I figure something similar likely happened to Darren. I can't imagine who was next up in line to post up at the abandoned building. I'm just glad I didn't stay any longer than I did.